So we talked about web-safe fonts in the last lesson. Web-safe fonts are available on pretty much all computers out there, but quite frankly, they're pretty boring. These days, there are tons of websites where we can find plenty of beautiful fonts. Some of these fonts are free, the other ones are paid, so you have to get a license. Generally speaking, the paid ones tend to have a better quality, which means they look better at different sizes. They look very sharp, very clear. So if you're working on a serious project, you may want to use a paid font. But in this lesson, I'm going to show you how to use a very popular and free font called Open Sans. So here on fontsquirrel.com, you can find plenty of free fonts. Let's search for Open Sans. All right, here it is. So we can download this font as a TTF file. That is the format of a font file. So font files come in a variety of different formats. We have TTF, OTF, EOT, WOF, and WOF 2.0. Now, don't worry about memorizing any of this stuff. Just remember that font files come in different formats, just like images and videos come in different formats, right? So for web, we're going to use WOF and WOF 2.0 because these formats are more compressed and more efficient for web. When embedding fonts in our web pages, we want to make sure that our fonts are really small so they can be downloaded as soon as possible. So back to fontsquirrel.com. Let's download Open Sans as TTF. All right, we get a zip file. Let's uncompress it. Inside this folder, we have a license file and a bunch of TTF files. Each file represents this file in a different style. For example, we have Open Sans regular. We also have Open Sans italic, Open Sans bold, bold italic, and so on. Now, if you want to install these fonts on your computer, you can simply double click on them and install them. Then you can use them in software like Photoshop, Word, and so on. But for web pages, we're going to convert these files to a different format, to the WOF format, because TTF files are pretty big. Look at their size. They're all over 200 kilobytes, right? So we're going to convert this to WOF. So back to fontsquirrel.com. Let's go to the generator page. Over here, we can upload a font in a variety of different formats and convert it to WOF. So let's go to upload. And I'm going to select Open Sans regular and bold. Now to select multiple files, on Mac, you have to hold down the Command key. On Windows, you probably have to hold down Control or Alt. I'm not entirely sure. So let's go ahead. All right, the upload is going to take a few seconds. All right, now take a look. So we have Open Sans regular and bold. Now below the font files, we have the settings for conversion. We can use the basic setting, optimal or expert if we know what we're doing. I'm going to go with optimal, and let's also accept their agreement and then download our kit. This is going to take a few seconds, so I'm going to pause the recording. Once again, we get a zip file, so let's uncompress it. Now, inside this folder, we have Open Sans regular in a couple of different formats, WOF and WOF 2. Look at the file size. The WOF file is 25 kilobytes and WOF 2 is 18 kilobytes, so it's more efficient. Now, these days, most browsers support the WOF format, but some more modern browsers also support WOF 2. So here on caniuse.com, let's search for WOF. Now look, most of the browsers out there support WOF files, including Internet Explorer. Now look at WOF 2.0 over here. Once again, most of the modern browsers support WOF 2.0 files, but Internet Explorer is not. So back to this folder, we have Open Sans in regular style in two different formats. We also have Open Sans bold in two different formats, right? So we're going to copy these font files into our project. So back to our project, inside the CSS folder, let's add a new folder called Fonts. I would like to create another folder here for Open Sans. So in case we have multiple fonts in the future, we're going to categorize them in different folders. So now we're going to drag and drop these font files over here. Perfect. Now back to this folder, we also have a style sheet file. Let's open this in VS Code. Here we have the font face rule to register a custom font and tell the browser where to find the font files. Look at the properties. We have font family, which is set to an arbitrary name, and source, which specifies the location of font files. So here we have two files. The first one has the WAV2 extension. The second one has the WAV extension. Now, right next to each file, you can see the format of that file. So we're providing a font in two different formats. When a browser sees this property, if it supports the WAV2 format, it's going to download the first font file. Otherwise, it's going to download the second font file, okay? So here we have a rule for registering Open Sans in regular and another rule to register Open Sans in bold. Obviously, here we're referencing two different font files, okay? So we're going to copy these two rules and put them at the top of our style sheet. These rules have to be at the very top because we have to register these fonts first before we can use them, okay? Now, let's make a few small changes here. This generated code calls the first font family Open_Sans regular and the second one Open Sans bold. I don't like this naming convention. I would prefer to use the same name for our font. So I'm going to call this Open Sans. Next, we need to update the URL of our font file. So back to our project, our style sheet is right here. We want to reference the files in this folder, fonts/Open Sans, right? So we need to type the relative path to these files. That is fonts/Open Sans/. So I'm going to prefix all these files with their folder, okay? Now, for our first rule, we're going to use font weight and font style of normal because we're using Open Sans in regular style, okay? Now, for the second rule, I'm going to use the same name as before, so Open Sans, and once again, we're going to prefix these files with their folder, okay? Now, in this rule, I want to set font weight to bold because we're referencing the bold version of Open Sans, okay? Now that we have registered this font, we can use it anywhere in our style sheet. For example, for our body text, we can use Open Sans before Arial. Now let's save the changes. And here's what we get. So to embed a custom font in our web pages, first we have to use the font face rule to register that font, and then we can use that font just like a regular font anywhere in our style sheet.